Chidanandji, now you can start giving lecture.
Please unmute Chidanandji.
Yeah. Namaskar. Good evening. We have a question before us. How does asking how imply a mechanical process? Most of you, if not all of you, are aware that on many occasions people would ask Krishnaji, how do we become attentive? How do we handle emotions? How do we become good? How do we awaken the intelligence in us? 100 contexts, people would come up with how. And Krishnaji never liked that question, how. Of course, with all patience, most of the times, and sometimes losing his patience, he would say, don't ask how. When you ask how, it implies a mechanical process. And that's what we are trying to examine now. Why on the earth does asking how imply a mechanical process? Or in simpler language, what is wrong with asking how? How does it rain? How does sun rise in the east? How does man get old? All these are considered questions coming from an intelligent mind. In today's world where science, technology, and so on have occupied a central place in the so-called development, a little girl or a little boy asking how is appreciated. If your granddaughter, barely 4 years old, comes and asks you, Grandpa, how does a flower blossom? You get proud. You say to your friends, look at my granddaughter. At the age of 4, she is asking, how does a bud open and become a flower? But when it comes to the psychological domain, not all dare say this, but Krishnamurti, known for calling a spade, known for being very straightforward, or known for being very blunt at times, would show such displeasure and say, why are you always asking how? Why are you stuck with how? Coming from a Vedanta background, if you permit me, I would share something with you. Swami Vivekananda in the late 1890s used to say at several of his lectures that this phenomenal world has space, time, and causation. And the liberating truth, whatever different schools of thought call it, in the Vedanta they call it Brahman. When you know Brahman, you get liberated. So Vivekananda would say that liberating truth is untouched by space, time, and causation. How interesting. Causation has no business in the liberating insight. It is neither part of the means nor part of the end. which means neither in that liberated state of mind or state of being is there any cause and effect sequence, nor is the contemplation, the inquiry, nor is the process which is involved in coming upon that liberating insight have any place for cause and effect. We are helpless, we are using a word like process for want of any other word. In no way do we endorse the view that liberation is the end result of a process. It is not. Freedom is not at the end of a process, whereas you and I are so much in love with processes. Even if a mystic says to us, the highest truth is beyond all processes, you and I would ask that mystic, yeah, I appreciate that. What is the process to understand it? We want a process everywhere. We want a cause-effect relationship everywhere. Do this and get that. If you do this, you will get there. This is an obsession. This is a strong conditioning. And due to this conditioning, we are never able to take the quantum leap. By way of an analogy, again seeking your permission for analogies, examples, parables, stories, jokes, etc., have their own felicity but their own sad limitations. Therefore, very sparingly we will use analogies. Analogies many times give you a deceptive feeling that you got it, you understood it, only to discover next morning that you didn't understand anything. Somebody thought that he had conquered anger. He had gone to some ashram for 10 days. And on the 10th day, he became so emotional. He prostrated before his teacher and said, I am so thankful to you. I have conquered anger. When he went back home, within an hour of talking to his wife, he lost all temper and got very angry with her. Because she asked him, what did you get in attending that camp? Why did you go there? So, anyway, coming back, by way of an analogy, take it with a grain of salt or a pinch of salt. When we are dreaming, in the dream, there may be a clock on the wall showing time, and the clock might be going at a certain pace. Time is flying at a certain speed. In the dream world, there is also space, far and near. In the dream, some of us might be in Toronto watching the full solar eclipse and saying, wow. And then we get up, it is one more day to go for the actual solar eclipse to take place. And then we say, oh my God, I watched it on dream. Now the serious question is, what happened to the time of the dream? What happened to the space XYZ of dream? And what under the sun happened to any other dimensions like cause and effect of the dream? When we wake up, the dream is understood to be a dream. Is it possible for us to wake up from this so-called waking state where we normally think we are all smart, intelligent people? Are we really? Are we really intelligent? Or are we another set of sheep mechanically going about our life day after day. So here comes the question, how is or why is asking how a mechanical process? It implies a mechanical process. You know why? Or how do we appreciate this statement? When we ask someone, how do we conquer anger, which is a psychological issue? How do I go from Indore to Mumbai is not a psychological issue. To go from Indore to Mumbai or from Mumbai to Surat, to ask how is not at all a mechanical process, not at all unintelligent. On the contrary, it is wise to ask somebody and opt for the best way. Now, so many Vande Bharat trains have come, and many people who would abhor trains are now going for Vande Bharat. I am going by Vande Bharat. Rajdhani, Shatabdi, Tejas. So many good trains have come. So you find out the best one. How do I go from Indore to Mumbai? Take such and such train, the most economical, clean, neat, and so on. But to say, how do I overcome anger? How do I rise above lust? How do I get out of my weakness for money, gold, on the lofty plains of a mystic like J. Krishnamurti? That question, how, as applied to overcoming anger or lust or greed or weakness for money or fame or name, asking how is there's something wrong with that. Because do you think overcoming anger is like going from Indore to Mumbai? Is it a mechanical process? Is it a physical movement? Is it a movement in time? A bud blossoming and becoming a flower is a process in time, on the axis of time. Can we say at point T1 I was very short-tempered, very angry? At point T2 I became half as much angry. At point T3, 25% as much angry as before. And at point T5, after about 18 hours, 18 days, or 18 weeks, or 18 years, or Hindus are fond of saying after 18 lives. I will not be surprised if even among those who study Krishnamurti day and night have this conditioning. One morning you may see them putting the Krishnamurti book down. Ha! I will take at least 3 more lives to understand what this great man is saying. It has become a common idiom. Many people don't know what is business of life and another life and so on. Idiom. Anyway, let's not get into either Hindu philosophy or English language. That would also amount to a diversion of some kind. The question remains, in what way does it stand apart? Well, going from anger to no anger also perhaps is some similar to going from Indore to Mumbai. Or if it is very hard, maybe it is from Indore to Moscow, very far, long distance. It's not at all comparable. Why is not comparable? The psychological domain is extremely complex. I would take the liberty of saying in modern times, as medical science has found out more and more, it has been or it has become more and more clear that it's not just thoughts or emotions. You and I are helplessly pulled, pushed, turned around, pushed around. We are tossed up in the air by certain secretions of glands. I don't have a medical background, therefore I always forget the names of all those things. Some serotonin, some endorphin, and some so many words. Adrenaline, and there are so many secretions in various glands and other organs, I suppose, which cause unexpected burst of a certain urge, anger, jealousy, greed, sexual urge, violence, to want to kill somebody or to offer oneself, kill me, kill me. There are people who offer themselves to be killed. Suicide bombs. That girl who went maybe with folded hands, but having a time bomb inside her dress and greeted Rajiv Gandhi in Sri Perumbudur near Chennai. And the rest of it was history or is history. The bomb exploded. Rajiv Gandhi was torn to pieces. What happened to the girl? She, of course, blew into pieces. So, what is that which happened to her? Wanting to die for some so called cause. Therefore, this process, even though modern medical science has come out with a lot of explanations, and today you have neuroscientists, neurologists, so many neuro dash dash. David Eagleman, other day in a dialogue in Mumbai of students of Krishnaji, somebody quoted, what was that book he quoted? Live Wired, Live Wired by David Eagleman. David Eagleman is a very well-known professor of neurology in Stanford University. He has written many books, and all his books are very readable. So no wonder he was quoted in a Krishnamurti dialogue. How the brain functions and what chemicals and what other phenomena processes happen, and then you get angry. And if you imagine, give me one year, I will completely become free of anger. I promise you, I will not be greedy. Give me 6 months. I have chalked out a plan. I have made a 3-year plan to completely purify my mind, etc. You may say, and you may have various ideas of some practices. Alas, with due respect to so many techniques and practices and asana and pranayama and so many kriyas, Sudarshan kriya or some inner engineering or so many things are talked about in today's world. Also, with due respect to them, we don't say they are utterly useless. They may do some good to us. The self in us, the self that we are, is extremely complex. We may seem to be different. We may seem to have changed. How long? To what extent? Is it complete change or is it certain change in a certain dimension or area only, certain aspect from certain angle of view? Is it just some window dressing? Is it just some cosmetic change? Is it something superficial? All these questions arise. All right, without dragging it further, you may have another question. If we are not to ask how do we change, how do we come upon attention, how do we live responsibly, how do I love my spouse, how do I respect my teachers, with whatever these are all psychological dimensions. Please do not mix with them some physical process in between. Suddenly change. Then you got to be ready, to be alert enough. This is mechanical. So I was asking a friend of mine today, my Innova Cresta, I touched the opening, and it gave us anti-theft siren yesterday. Everybody was looking whose car is making so much sound. You know that? I'm not a thief, and I did not. Second time, third time also it did it. Then it stopped on its own. Today I tried and nothing happened. So there you may ask why. Because we have not studied the features of the car. There must have been some button which should have been turned off, but somebody left it on. Especially when the car is used by 2 or 3 different people at different times. Somebody changes the settings. Or there is some, these are all physical things. I remember today actually we used the electronic button to open it. No sound, no anti-theft siren. Yesterday I used mechanical key to open the car. Oh, not once, twice, 3 times I tried. All the 3 times, whole mohalla had to get disturbed. Though surprisingly, nobody came out of their houses. People in our country, I think, are used to some of these. They would have cursed me sitting in their own house. Nobody even peeped from their windows whose car is making sound. That's another side of the story. But now, lastly, I would say, and this is a valuable point, what are we to do if we understand something is a psychological matter, and to ask how is like using a foot rule to try to measure the depth of Atlantic Ocean? You need an entirely different way to see. So what is that? That is where unbiased observation, being with anger, being with greed, being with whatever is happening in the mind, being with it without labeling it as bad or good, being with it without having a hope. I think I will catch it by its roots and eradicate it today, etc. Don't live in the world of fancies. Be with your so-called negativity and stay in awareness. I'll conclude my comments saying, I guess Albert Einstein made a statement. If you remain on this same level as the level of the problem, you won't be able to solve the problem. To solve a problem, his words may be slightly different, but he said something to the effect. When you rise to a higher plane than the problem, you will be able to solve the problem. I don't know in what context he said. He was not only an outstanding physicist, but also a decent philosopher with a certain spirituality of his own. He would speak wonderful things about human values. He would advise youngsters, do not seek success, do not seek fame. Be a man of substance, be a man who puts in hard work. something like that. He actually had a certain moral eminence also. So that Einstein had said, unless you go to a higher plane than the plane of the problem, you will not be able to solve it. In a way, that is where this phenomenal world is made of. The warp and woof of the phenomenal world is space, time, and causation. And causation is how? What makes the bud to blossom? What makes our hair to go grey? When we have just begun to enjoy life, the hair goes grey. Somebody complained other day. When we have just begun to love life, the ability to enjoy life is gone, he said. So why? Why and how are adored in science, but in higher philosophy, why and how are looked at with suspicion? For we are trying to rise above a certain framework, and why and how are part of that framework. Rise above. And what under the sun is this rising above? You seem to be mystifying everything. Please demystify things, you may say to me. I wish I could do that. But we Indians, I think, especially have a great love of mystery. Given the chance, we would make even small things rather mystical. Let me not go into it. I can't think of an example, instantly. Some of you may think of some example. I'll be putting everything in a mystical language. It is said about Shashi Tharoor that when you tell him something very simple, his English is so good, he will express it in such a complicated way, nobody will understand. What did you say? Maybe he described just taking a cup of coffee. Next time I will be ready with an actual example of how Shashi Tharoor can describe something in a way and with such terrific English that people will have to use dictionary and other reference sources to understand. So here, are we also mystifying everything by saying, rise to a higher plane? Thank God, it is no mystery. This is plain. Let go of your old habit of going round and round in the same way of cause hunting, of either justifying something or condemning something, taking sides, be taking some bias, etc. Let go of them and be with whatever is the issue, not was the issue, whatever is the issue at this moment, just to be with it, which means be aware of it, stay aware of it, then you already have gone to a different plane. Because the usual plane is to chase something with the question why, how, who did it, how. That is one plane. The higher plane is nothing but unbiased watching. Let me pause here, for I have run out of ideas also, by the way, in between us.
Thank you
Thank
very
you.
much. Chidanand. Thank you very much for wonderful lecture. Harshad Parekh, would you please like to say something more on it? Harshad Parekh, sir.
आपका mic off है.
Yes. Yeah. Are you able to hear my voice?
Yeah, very well, very well.
Thank you, Swamiji. Very interesting as usual, with many examples. I like to look at the title. How does asking how imply a mechanical process? A mechanical process, by that we mean doing something without understanding, without awareness. without feeling, just like a machine, like the fan which is rotating in my room, it keeps on rotating. And similarly, as some religious, spiritual people, if they are repeating some words like Sri Ram, Jai Ram, and they keep on repeating, but they are not aware, and their mind is wandering all over the place, some about thinking something else, then it is a mechanical process, repeating the same word again and again, some mantra like that. It doesn't really help in the psychological field. Asking how is important in the physical world of activities. Like if I don't know how to cook, but suppose I want to cook, let's say dosa, then I can go to Google and ask how to cook dosa, and the Google can give me some few steps. And then according to that step, if I cook, maybe the first time it may not come out very well, the dosa. Then next day I do, again it may not come out. But after few days, I learn from my experience of cooking, and then I may be able to make very good dosa and can maybe invite some other people to come and eat this dosa. So in the physical world, how to is very important. And even Krishnaji was learning yoga from Iyengar and Desikachar. And Krishnaji was learning how to do it. And pranayam also was learning. So how you do is very important. And you have to follow certain instructions of the expert, even in yoga and pranayam. But about understanding our own self and to be free from fear or anger, jealousy, loneliness. We can read many, many books of Krishnamurti and many other writers, but if we are not able to observe our own mind, then just gathering the information from the Krishnamurti's teachings or from other philosophers, it doesn't help us to be free from many problems, and and to and there is no how in this field, because here in this field of learning about our own self, learning about what people try to understand Krishnamurti, but Krishnamurti cannot be understood. But if we can read a little bit of Krishnamurti and then try to observe our own mind, forgetting everything what Krishnamurti has said, and for that, maybe how to is necessary in the beginning, that one has to be alone, one has to be in a very good place, very naturally good place, and then one has to turn the attention inward and then watch the thoughts which are coming and going, and not to interfere, not to say it is good or bad. And one has to really do it. And that doing, if a person is able to do it, then it becomes very, very enjoyable, very, very interesting, very natural, and very effortless. So this happens only when we are deeply interested in learning about our own mind, not learning about Krishnamurti philosophy, but learning about our own mind. And when we are learning that the relationship of subject and object, it breaks down, because in understanding or looking at ourselves, we are looking at ourselves. So our thoughts are the object, and there is something else which can see thoughts clearly, and that is not thought itself, but what Krishnamurti would say, that it is something different from thinking, and he calls it awareness, which is like coming out from the plane of thinking and feeling and looking at thinking and feeling with curiosity and with honesty, with intensity. And all these qualities are required to look at ourselves as we are. And when we are able to look at ourselves as we are, then we don't need to read any philosopher. We may read, but it's not about understanding the brain mechanism and the chemical processes happening. It is that is all for scientists to go into the structure of the brain, but people who are interested in learning about our own mind and in that all that information about the brain, it becomes a hindrance. One has to really be silent, curious, with energy, with kind of a freedom. One has to look, and that is very difficult for most people. Most people are not interested in being alone and silent and turning the attention inward and observing the thoughts and see how they are coming and going without interfering in this process. So that is why Krishnaji said there is no how to look at our own mind, because there is no process in this. Only one needs is a curiosity, one needs a passion, one needs energy, kind of a freedom to look. And as long as this doesn't happen, then we can go on gathering lots of concepts about Krishnamurti, and we can say thinking cannot solve our problem. Thinking is the problem. That is what Krishnaji said, and that is what Swamiji said. The problem cannot be solved at the same level at which it is created. So one has to look at the creation of the problem. That means looking how anger arises or fear arises at the time it is arising. So this requires a kind of ongoing, effortless observation of what is happening within us. Initially, we may need to make some effort because we are not used to look inward. But once we begin to see without any effort, without any support of any philosopher, and we can really see the amazing thoughts, feelings, many things coming. And then I found from my own experience that this looking inward with curiosity, without interference, it began to change the quality of the brain, and then it began to change the quality of looking at a tree or the colors or the clouds or the human beings. And so much beauty is around us, which we are not aware because our mind is chattering and we are not aware. So only when this awareness comes, then our life becomes very interesting, enjoyable, and we don't need to ask many questions. And even if any question comes, that question can be also looked at, and in that question there is an answer. So we don't need to ask question to Krishnaji also, because we have to see how this question comes and what happens afterwards. Because when the question is very, very important to us, then our mind stops and then we begin to look. So only people who are very much interested in looking at their own mind, not in gathering information about brain and the chemicals in the brain, not that way, but looking directly and not even analyzing like one thought saying that it is good or it is bad, but from awareness, from freedom, one has to watch this ongoing process within us. And then that looking itself brings energy and freshness. And that is the beauty of what Krishnamurti was saying, that you don't need anything, all you need is pure observation. And without that, everything becomes a burden. You get tired, and the knowledge becomes a burden. So, knowledge cannot help us. Only curiosity, aloneness helps. Okay, thank you very much. I finished.
Waghmare, you are welcome. Waghmare, you are welcome. Dinesh, please unmute and say. Dinesh Waghmare, please unmute and say. Is there any problem? Then I have to call Pradeep ji.
All are you able to hear me, sir, now?
Yeah, we are very well able. Yes, sir.
Okay,
Please,
then.
go ahead.
First of all, my views are, what is the meaning of how? As we are associating it with the subject, asking how imply a mechanical process. So what is the meaning of how? How means in what way or in what extent? Actually, we use how when we introduce direct or indirect questions. How is an interrogative adverb? By what means, by what way, by what method, by what virtue, through what medium, with whose help, etc., etc. How to be answered by explaining the means. How indicates a question at the questioner's end, which may indicate his need for answer. Because of many reasons, like suffering, curiosity, life problem for which a solution is asked, etc. So first, intellectual satisfaction should be done, or it is a must. That's what I feel. The thought has to be addressed, its structure should be understood. So in general, it is okay to consider how does asking how imply a mechanical process if we refer to people question with refers to the JK teachings. Many critical aspects thinking that by adopting some process or method, they will achieve the desired end result. So I will not put any negative label on asking how. This is very clear. Even JK has replied many questions starting with the how. How is to be, one is to be aware, how is one to be free from of sorrow, how does one transform oneself, how can thought be silenced, etc., etc. There are so many questions he has addressed, right? And JK has replied these questions means freely. So there is no issue as such. And it is not one should not put that negative label on how. Now next portion. How does asking how imply a mechanical process? So a mechanical process. Now to understand what is mechanical process, we have to understand effort and learning. That's what JK says. Is it possible for a mind which is the result of time, of experience, of accumulated knowledge to live without struggle, without any conflict, and therefore without any effort? Learning is a difficult art. Most of us know how to accumulate knowledge and from that to act. Is not learning something moment to moment. We accumulate and then act. And from that action, learn to add more or to take away. But one must question whether such a process is actually learning. To learn means, does it not that you are learning about something which you don't know? And from that state of learning, you are acting. So learning is always in the present, in the active present, and not a thing which you have accumulated and from which you act. I think there is a great deal of difference between these two. One is mechanical. When you act from a knowledge or accumulated knowledge or your past, that is mechanical. That is having accumulated knowledge, acting from that. And the other is non-mechanical. It is in the active present, which is always learning and not accumulating. And that is the only way to live in the present. Now, what does effort mean? When we do something that is pleasurable, there is no effort. We do it easily. When there is something which you are obliged to do, when which is rather a strain and painful, which is not satisfying, then it is an effort to do it. Effort implies, does it not, a state of mind in which there is a duality, wanting something and not wanting something. When there is a contradiction in ourselves, then this contradiction creates a dual activity. And to understand this dual activity, to go beyond it is effort. There is duality, means man and woman, light and shade, and all the rest of it. But inwardly, psychologically, why do we have duality at all? Is it our conditioning? Is it that we have been brought up to compare what is with what should be? We have been conditioned in what is right and what is wrong, what is good and what is bad, and that this should be and that should not be. That is, this is moral and that is not moral, immoral. Is that one of the many reasons? Why is this duality come into being at all? Is it because we believe that by thinking about the opposite polarity, it will help us to get rid of what is? So we use the opposite as the means of avoiding the actual about which we do not know what to do. Now, what is not mechanical? Of course, it is love. To find out love, there must be dying. Love is something that is not mechanical. What is mechanical is pleasurable, such as sexual experience. You want it to be repeated over and over again. Thought has created image, symbols, ideas, and thinking about it, it will increase and strengthen the pleasure. When the thought is working through memory, it is mechanical. When the thought is working through memory, it is mechanical. Why does a man go for mechanical process at all? To get psychological security. And in such grooves, mind like to work, but it is a very narrow and fragmented field. So in mechanical process, there is a kind of order, but for some, it works for a little while. According to the JK, the mechanical process makes mind dull and is in such order, still there is a problem. Here, what he is talking is we daily go to the office or we do something which is a repetitive sort of thing. But he also confirms that it is necessary, because if we will not do it, then we will not earn our bread and butter. But in the psychological field, he questions it. All knowledge is mechanical. Knowledge is a mechanical process of acquisition. I mean by mechanical, repetitive, which is experience, knowledge, thought and action. So this is what JK has to say. But what my views are, let me tell you what my views are. Now, in my views, though mechanical, the process has limitations, but it is must for routine life. That also confirms this. Also, if considered it in spiritual context, then also it is useful, as insight can come in that case also, provided the disciple has ardent desire, sincerity, honesty, persistence, etc. As the insight comes through subconscious mind, whose root is in unknown. So the journey of insight is through it comes from unknown via subconscious mind. So here mainly subconscious mind is active, not your conscious mind. So one has to understand this thing very clearly. And insight leads to truth, wisdom, etc. Even in case of scientists also, we find the same phenomena happening. They get insight despite of thought. Even they can get a realization also of some other aspect. For example, Einstein said God does not play dice. So you get that relation also, that some problem is there. Say for example, Einstein, the example of Einstein has been given. I would also like to talk on Einstein. Einstein has accepted that this physical law and the theory of relativity is given, theory of relativity 1, theory of relativity 2. But when he has come to this quantum physics, all the photons and all that, he was the inventor of that, photons and all that. But when it comes to quantum physics, he found that everything is random. In quantum physics, no order can be established. Whereas when you come to the manifested world of our normal world, all things are in order. So there is a explicit order, what he said. So in the last days he said, but he realizes that there is no correlation, or we are not able to understand why this is happening. And he says God does not play dice. So what I mean to say, although we understand Krishnamurti that there is a way, and Harshad Parekh always say that you should see, you should get the direct perception of the truth. What I understood from his version, that one should be able to observe the things without any past coming into in between. But how many people can do that? He also confirms that one should have freedom for that. Now, can with all the thoughts and with all the past burden, can anybody see without any burden, or without any image? Can he see the tree and get that perception of truth? Or first he has to clear all the past, or he has to drop all the past, and then he should go for the this thing. So this is a very tricky question. And in tradition, yes, I am finishing, sir. One line only. One line only.
Waghmare, would you please allow me to ask Chidanandji? He has to leave at 7:12. So please let me have his view, and then I will give you opportunity to say more. Okay? Chidanandji, please.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Thank you. Yeah. So, referring to Dinesh ji, who just now spoke, as usual, he examines different parts of the topic. What is meant by how, what is meant by mechanical process, and so on. I guess he uses even dictionaries to find out the correct meanings, which we highly appreciate. And in between, he also said that he doesn't look down at the question how, or he doesn't look at it negatively. We very much appreciate that frankness, because we should not get carried away by something Krishnaji has said. we must be honest in how we look at a particular issue. And he also elaborated on it, how Krishnamurti himself at places has patiently answered questions, maybe starting with how, but on a more rigorous plane, it seems Krishnaji had reservations about this how. Going to Harshadji's comments, one was problems cannot be solved by thinking. Of course, the reference is to psychological problems. That was significant. I had not explicitly said that, though I might have meant it. Thinking. And that is a very ticklish issue. Many of us, when we say or when we read or we hear that this problem cannot be solved through thinking, we go to the other extreme to become thoughtless. Thoughtless meaning just become dumb. Of course, that is not meant. You neither get into thoughts nor go into some kind of dumbness. Therefore, we may call it a tightrope walk. In the tightrope walk, typically a young girl is holding a long stick, walking on a tightrope. She has the risk of falling either on the right side or on the left side. But if she is really an adept at that skill, she doesn't fall. Likewise, you and I either get swayed by thoughts, we drown or we sink in thoughts, or become dumb. There is no intelligence operating. That is perhaps a suppression of thoughts and emotions and so on. And there were many valuable points in whatever Harshadji said. On the whole, therefore, this how or why, asking how is a mechanical process. Harshadji added one important dimension to my quotation from Einstein, which I appreciate. He said, you can't solve a problem at the level where the problem is created. Factors that have gone into the creation of the problem. So, time is a factor, thinking is a factor. Thinking, time, and causation, our belief in causation, our presumption that everything should be the effect of a cause. And that has sustained and strengthened the predicament, the particular state. So the level of the problem where it is created, the level on which the problem is created, that word created was a significant part that he added. Thank you for doing that. I myself am very fascinated by this issue. In fact, in the traditional philosophical system, someone like Ramana Maharshi would say, no amount of scriptural study can bring about enlightenment. You should stay as the self. In the Vedanta, they have a self with a capital S. Atma Nishtha, they would say. That's very thought provoking. Stay as the self and be the self. Be that Satchit. Such words come towards us. Whereas in a whole lot of other places, the emphasis is on studying some Upanishad and understanding it. Vakyartha, they call it. Let me not go more into the traditional philosophies. But it's interesting that great minds in this world from time immemorial have here and there dared to, they have shown the courage to question a whole system. Read this, read that, study grammar, study this logic for some number of years, etc. There is a whole system where you, as though, prepare yourself and then you crack the code. So they have questioned the system. I don't say they have demolished or completely shown the falsity of the system, but certainly by doing so, people like Krishnaji, they have alarmed the scholars. They have made scholars who are sitting upon a high tower of scholarship, feel alarmed. Oh, wait a minute, maybe they are wrong. We are wrong. Maybe we are, taking advantage of certain verbosity, certain conceptual knowledge. So it has made them. Therefore, it is said he is the teacher of teachers. Krishnaji is sometimes called the teacher of teachers because many teachers who are highly respected in the society openly or secretly study Krishnamurti for some kind of out of box insight. Therefore, this question is something that we need to go into again and again. I'm sure it will come in other forms in future sessions. Thank you. Let me pause here.
Thank you very much. Waghmare, please come and say whatever you wanted to say.
I would also like to hear what more he
Yeah.
has to say. Because it was very interesting what
You have to
he
hear for
shared.
4 minutes. You have to
I'm
hear
here
for
for 4 or 5 minutes.
Please leave
Can I
it.
continue?
Please. You are welcome.
There was also one point about this repetitive process. Harshad Parekh sir has said that this repetition of mantra without having any proper awareness cannot do anything, or it becomes a pure mechanical process and it is a futile exercise. But my experience and my overall understanding about it is that even if you do it mechanically, after some time, and if you do it in a group, after some time, there is insight. So that insight actually can solve many problems or can give you the guidance. Even in case of Krishnamurti, we observe that he has given lot of emphasis on the insight. So it is not important that what process you are following or what is the other words you are doing or whether you are addressing thought or not. Important thing is you should get the insight and the truth. So that insight can come in other ways also. It is not restricted to only one that you see without or you are having a silent mind and you can have a this and means only you want to see without any naming and terming and all that. There are other ways also by which this insight can come, and that insight, when the insight comes, it is not restricted to only some particular things. It can give you the guidance about even the truth. So truth can be addressed by the insight, whether it comes in JK's teachings, by JK's teaching, or by any other ways and means. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Pradeep sir. Pradeep ji.
I think I am audible.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you very much. Although Dinesh has covered a lot many things and some very important points also. Because most of the times when the topic is there, it is usually it tilts towards something. It tells you something, right? The topic itself tells you about something, that what it could be, where it will be on the lower side, and what will be emphasized. So again, every topic you will have. So the duality of that nature is always there when such topics come to us. Then Swamiji started very well with in the sense Vedanta and the Brahmin, the concept of Brahmin, where their causation is not there, time and space, everything is not there, right? But in our day-to-day samsara, day-to-day life, cause and effects are visibly so, and our problems also get solved through finding the right cause of our suffering. Swamiji talked about that self is very complicated. When does it originate? Whether there is matter around or not, whether some mechanical is also contributing to this or not, how it gets complicated definitely shows that there is a relationship problem. Consciousness, the very fact that we think that this is physical, this is psychological, itself the problem starts from there only. We know, we have started, we have divided it right in the beginning. So it becomes complex when in relationship you know yourself. We are talking about that unless until you know yourself, problems cannot be solved for you. So to me, all the mechanical is the product of psychological. You see, it starts in mind, which is a part of river of consciousness, if I may use this expression, because development of nuclear power and arsenal initially started as a thought experiment, same in quantum mechanics. So relationship of matter and consciousness is still a mystery. Still a mystery. You see, how something can be done now, it's a question of how something can be done comes all the time in our daily life. But when we ask others to tell how a particular state can be achieved, especially in psychological realm, that shows, you see, there the problem starts. Life is an integrated network of processes, to me, to my ignorance, to my innocence, whatever it is. You see, that partly known to man and largely unknown, partly known to us and largely unknown. These are, you see, the difference is that open lives, living systems are open systems, and mechanism can be visibly demonstrated in closed systems easily. Then suppose pranayam includes different processes. There may appear mechanical, but in mindfulness, one keeps on adding new things, even in so-called mechanical. Because our mind consciousness is so subtle and so active in us, depending on the inquiry. So this keeps on contributing all the time. So we can never say this thing. And Harshad Bhai was talking about physical mechanical processes like dosa making. Very interesting, because I enjoy eating, I enjoy making also. You see, it starts with me, the person who is interested in dosa. My consciousness who is interested, who has tasted somewhere. So it starts as a desire for me to learn how to get the same taste again, or something known place where you get the special dosa, like that. So it starts with man, it starts with desire, it starts with even my state of when I'm preparing dosa, what is my state? Everything contributes to this so-called mechanical. In each mechanical process, which starts with the psychological, there is always a contribution of psychology and desires behind that. You see, Buddha talked about that there is cause, there is suffering, sansara is dukh, and for suffering there is a cause. The once you know the cause, it is nivaran. So these things, so it is not easy. We are all the time emphasizing on either this side or that side or that side. So this problem will always be there. Mind itself is a process. Processes are there, always there, whether I get cognition later than things have happened already. This is also known to psychologists these days, and even other scientists. So likewise, the problem, whether still problem is there, whether how it relates to me, whether I want ready-made answers, ready-made food from others, there will be always problem. There will be no solution. That is a pakka thing. But then this self is a very interesting and complicated stuff. So it is not that divided from here, it's physical, and from there it starts psychological. No. To me, till today, I'm so clear about it, till it is changed further, that these are not, we usually come out with duality, struggle, and we come out with case studies even to show if this is this and that is that. But still, there is consciousness behind. How consciousness in Indian philosophy, matter is a byproduct of consciousness. It's a sort of precipitated consciousness or a condensed consciousness. So the consciousness will always be there, and it is there to me. This is what I feel. Thank you very much. Prasadji is waiting. Sorry for taking so much time. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. We are very much interested in Prasad. In every katha, we interested in Prasad only.
That's a good expression. Very good.
Sir, I am not capable of such a complications as Pradeep ji has mentioned just now, like matter and consciousness and all that. But for me, this question, asking how implies a mechanical process, is quite simple and clear, in the sense that Swamiji has made a very valid distinction between scientific questions and the psychological questions. This principle applies only for psychological questions, not at all for scientific questions. Swamiji has made it very clear, and that is very valid. And from that, in science, of course, how, why, and all that, what, these are all the basic questions of science. And so this doesn't apply there. It applies only for the psychological questions and in this realm. And it is very simple to understand why it applies. For example, Krishna, this goes into the question. This question goes to the root of self. Krishnaji's teaching revolves around self. We are all self-centered. All our activities are self-centered. And any mechanical process will only strengthen that self-centered activity. If you sit tight in a corner and contemplate God, what is happening? What is happening is simply that you are concentrating on some idea with the hope of deriving some benefit out of it. And that is only ultimately strengthening yourself. Self in the sense Krishnaji uses it. We have observed it so many times. Swamiji has also mentioned that tradition has self with a big S. That is not the self we are talking about. The self with a small s, about which Krishnaji talks mostly. And from that angle, all our activities, actually our thought itself is indicative of ourself. Lot of action of thought, ceaseless thought. thought when it is not required. Thought is required when you have to operate a machine, when you have to prepare a dosa, as Harshadji was giving that example. But otherwise, but we have thought in season and out of season. And that is the thought which is at the root of self and which we do not realize or recognize. So, thought is basically from the past. And any mechanical process is only an additive process. It is going to add. If you are gathering knowledge, yes, mechanical process is very much required. But you are not in your search, in your spiritual search, you are not gathering knowledge. You are not accumulating anything. On the other hand, you are seeding, you are shedding your luggage. And you cannot shed your luggage through any mechanical process. Any mechanical process is only going to add to your luggage. So, any asking how, it implies a mechanical process. How means you have to indicate some steps. I think in software, I am not a software guy. In software, I think there are steps. I have even forgotten what I knew earlier about this software thing. There are steps, and how implies those steps? How implies those steps, and those steps are only a mechanical process. If you follow those steps, any number of times you can follow those steps. That is not at all the search for truth. That is not at all the search for understanding yourself. There is no particular way of getting rid of your self-centered activity. You have only to understand it and see how it arises and how it is in in the corner of all your activities, basically. So to get that insight about the action of self, it is not at all a method. Nobody can give you that method. Krishnaji himself said he himself cannot give you that method. Krishnaji's teaching is not a method. He only says, observe your mind. Observe yourself. Understand yourself. That is all he has said. Whereas all our tradition, all other isms, they tell us so many things. You do this, you do that, 5 times a day, do namaz, something like that. Or you go early in the morning to the temple and offer some flowers, etc. All that is a mechanical process. You understand that, that is all what is implied in this question. And the question is very valid. Swamiji has made a valid distinction. Thank you, sir.
Adeen, please finish it within 3 minutes. Adeen, please. Please come forward. Please tell.
Yeah, now I'm able to unmute. So, yeah. So the question of how and the self, that is a question to me, like whether how and self is the same thing or not. Whether the self exists without the question how. And because in how implies knowledge and self also might be knowledge. So then are both the same? And possibly a distinction was made between the psychological how and the scientific how. I'm also not sure whether we can make that distinction. I feel that even science is saying that the perception comes first and the thought comes later. So I'm not sure. We generally feel that the thought comes first, the question comes first, and then the perception comes. I am not sure if this is true at all. Because in science also has not been able to find a self in the brain. So whether self and how is the same or not, that is my question. Yeah.
Dinesh Waghmare, if you can reply it in a minute, then come forward. Otherwise, we will end it here.
See, Krishnamurti has also explained this thing very well while talking to Dr. Bohm, that when we face the problems, we normally want this mechanical processes. And for the mechanical processes are required for the security. And now to have support from one side, we want an identity so that we can give a psychologically responsibility to that entity or identity. So a self is created, and that self becomes strong with the time, and he becomes a doer. So if you are interested, you can read Krishnamurti and Dr. Bohm's dialogue on this, right? And how then the self starts working on its own and then sees how this is happening, how that is happening. So to continue with the mechanical process, this how has to be addressed, so for the normal living and all that. So there is a order is formed, which is a normal order, or we can say fragmented order, so that he can live happily. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Modak, please end it. Modak, please end it.